Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Green Tea Podcast. We have now the Libra season. Hello, Libra bebes. Happy birthday. Well, let's get into what Libra is all about.
So, welcome everyone. Happy birthday to all the Libras out there. Libra season this year runs from September 22nd until October 22nd, I believe. It'll be coinciding with the fall equinox, the change of seasons into quarter four. Into the next season. Libra is a cardinal air sign, and it rules themes such as balance and harmony, beauty, relationships, and relationship dynamics. It also incorporates things like justice and law, as in like legality and contracts and things like that,
Mm.
as well as representing the other as it pertains to relationships. This is another person, partners. This is also the relationship with the general public as well. And we can learn a lot from Libra about refinement, art, and kind of like social intelligence. This idea that, who you know is important and can sometimes take you places. So we'll be talking a little bit about that. Some things that Libra just generally might struggle with, or like some themes of Libra that we might notice as well, are, issues with decision making or people pleasing or suppressing conflict. So, yeah, that's kind of just a general overview of where we're headed.
Wow. So I have to say something about Libras because this is generally what I noticed my first impression with Libras.
Mm,
They always have this good impression. First
mm.
impression. They're just very like social and just this kind. Yeah, this kind first impression. Like, do you understand what I'm saying? Like,
I do understand what you're saying. It's funny that you mentioned that because I feel that I could see that with the people that I know who are
mm,
Libras as well. And that does make a lot of sense because if Libra has an attunement to how they relate to others and what other people need or what they might expect or respond
mm,
well to, it kind of only makes sense that they know how to lead with, the charm or maybe a little bit of charisma, but the charm and the harmony at the forefront of the way that they interact. So that desire to like, make a good impression by not coming on like too strong or too aggressive or too, out of
mm,
the, box here. They're very good at just kind of creating that natural flow between like another person and establishing kind of harmony right off the bat when they meet people. So that makes sense. They're also sorry, very conscious of the fact that people are perceiving them and that they're
mm,
making an impression. So I think that at times they can be very focused on, how do I present myself in a way that will increase my chances that this person will like me or see me
mm.
as unproblematic, maybe even popular or something to that effect. So that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Statistically, I have not met a Libra where they come off as like super strong or like hard. It's
Mhm.
just at least the first impression, they're always kind and there's something very like I want to get to know them. They're friendly energy. There's also, I don't know if this is the again my own statistics of what I notice in terms of the male Libras. Not all, but I've noticed that male Libras that I've met tend to be tall and slim.
Mm.
Not all. I've met a Libra man who's totally the opposite. But generally, with that energy of being tall and slim and having that friendly energy, I'm like, "Are you a Libra?" And a lot of times they say yes.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I know that we had discussed this before as well with like the rising sign episodes, but it is true that sometimes your sign can also correlate to your physicality and what you look like.
Mm,
So air being kind of that like long, lengthy, airy type of stature. I could see, a gentleman being tall and thin. There is also an understanding as well that Libra is ruled by the planet of Venus, which is about
mm,
beauty and looks as well. So many times you can find that Libra placements, and it doesn't have to just be Libra Sun. It can be Libra Sun, Libra Rising, yada yada yada, Libra Midheaven, Mars. But a lot of these people also they are beautiful, sometimes very like conventionally beautiful. It's giving model, it's giving, all that type of stuff. So if you combine the length of the body plus like the Venusian features, it can lend its hand to also being easy on the eyes if you have Libra in your chart. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I now have a Libra rising for
Yeah.
me. Emma, do you have anything Libra in your chart?
I actually don't. Libra and
Oh.
Aries are like two. I mean, there's other signs, but Libra and Aries, I don't have anything going on there. So
Oh, okay, okay.
yeah.
Well, I think as a Libra rising, and I didn't know of this about me until I met you,
Mm,
but I do see myself when I'm in a group setting. I always try to play fair. For example, I went on this girls' trip very recently,
mm,
and I remember like out of our small group, I'm the one like, all right, everybody has to participate in cleaning up. I don't want to do extra work. I want everybody to have a role. And I
yeah.
feel like all the different girls just don't think that way. All the
Mm,
girls are very like, oh, I don't want to touch it. You know, they don't want to take out the garbage, whatever. Or like some other girls are a little more helpful than others. You know, everyone's personality is different, but I just remember that's the first thing that I go to in my mind. So maybe that's also related to my Libra rising.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, Libra has such an attunement to like fairness and justice and equality in some sense. Um, and it is interesting because you can see it translate through day to day interactions, like what you're talking about. Like it doesn't always have to be, in a courtroom or something. It's like even in small
Yeah.
interactions, like everybody, gets one. Everybody takes their turn to like contribute to this larger, function of the group. Um, so yeah, that absolutely makes sense. I think something that's really interesting about that concept of fairness as well is I think one of the lessons that Libra might find themselves coming up against is in a perfect world, like things are fair, But many times in life, we will realize, we're treated unfairly or unjustly. And there is no justice, there is no like, oh, hey, that wasn't okay. Like, here's this. As an example, like I saw this article the other day about someone who was awarded like $25 million or something because they had been wrongfully convicted and put in prison for like 40 or 50 years, which is just crazy. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Anyway, it starts to beg the question of like, is that fair? Can any amount of money really rectify 40 years of like lost life for somebody, So in our legal system that equates to some form of justice, but I think that's a larger thing, like I said, that Libra is
mm,
navigating in this life is like, what does fairness actually look like? And in scenarios where things are not always fair, what do you do about that? You know what I mean? So yeah, I think that's really funny
mm.
that you mentioned that, just
Yeah.
in that group. Yeah.
I mean, Libra, you said rules the whole fairness and justice, but it's funny because there's a stereotype with Libras that they're really bad with confrontations. Do you agree with that?
I think they can be bad with confrontation. I think they can be a little bit conflict avoidant, but it does make sense because their value and their goal is to keep things as harmonious as possible. And
Mm,
conflict, a confronting conflict can potentially disrupt that harmony. But I think what they have to learn is that like having harmony at the expense of truth and honesty is not, it might help in the moment, but over the long term what ends up happening usually is that we become resentful because
mm,
whatever, it kind of just keeps repeating itself, and like there's no fairness or things don't get readjusted. And so eventually that resentment can build and build and build to the point where eventually conflict is inevitable. So yeah, I do think they can be a little bit conflict avoidant, but I think that it comes from a well-intentioned place of trying to
mm.
maintain harmony. Libra's opposite is Aries, and Aries can be known to be very, self focused. It's focused on its needs and trying to get its needs satisfied. And it also isn't afraid to antagonize conflict. It's almost like the opposite of Libra. So, you can see how they kind of balance each other out in that
Mm,
regard, where, Libra is really good at kind of being like, whoa, guys, we don't need to get wild about this. We don't need to get aggressive. We can just let's solve
yeah.
this out. Like let's talk it out. Let's everybody share their perspective. Whereas Aries can be a little bit of like a bulldozer for that. Like let's just get it done. I'm going to push it. I'm going to force it. So you can see how they balance each other out. But yeah, I would agree with that for sure.
Yeah. I think as a Libra rising, I've had trouble going into conflict all my life
Mm,
until I realized it wasn't serving me anymore. Like you
yeah.
said, you said a great point where uh, until when can you keep peace? It's great for now, but in the long run, like you said, you build resentment. And that's the biggest, hardest lesson I've learned in my life. Where no, actually, if there's something that's bothering you, you call it out because that peace is only temporary, it's not permanent. And I think resolving it by using your words, saying, hey, I don't like this, or I like this, and using my Aries moon side has helped me immensely than trying to keep this peace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was going to ask, like, what is that experience like for you? Because you have, the Libra that's very, people oriented and whatever, but then there's also the moon and the Mars and Aries, which is very attuned to noticing when maybe you aren't being considered fairly. So I imagine there's some type of, like balance that you're trying to strike with those, and like one might be harder than the other initially to kind of like step into. Yeah, I'm curious about that.
Yeah, I think that I always used to have this like conflict in my own head, confrontation in my head
Mm.
where I'm like imagining I'm speaking up, but I don't. I think
Ah,
physically in like the real world, I try to keep a peace
yeah.
because you don't want to have conflict with your friends. Like it feels weird asking your friends for things that maybe they'll say no to, or
Mm.
I tend to make myself smaller
Mhm.
rather than really advocating for myself.
Yeah.
I used to be like that when it comes to work, when it comes to friends and everything. But I learned this year that when you don't advocate for yourself, nobody knows. It
Yeah.
goes unappreciated. So it's great that I've learned to speak up with my own words like, hey, I don't want to do all this work. Do you mind pitching in for me?
Mhm.
Great. Nobody is offended. Everybody understands what you want. So
Yeah.
I think balancing that out with, yes, keeping the peace and not going aboard and making yourself seem selfish, but speaking your wants and needs and negotiating with your friends at the same time has worked for me.
Yeah, I actually love what you just said there. Negotiation, I think, is a
Hmm.
great like facet of Libra's ability to communicate. I think that they have a skill at being able to, when they're open to conflict, or addressing conflict, they're able to communicate in a way that is honest and firm, but still diplomatic and kind. And a lot of times there's also a negotiation element of, you're not coming in just saying, hey, this is what it is, this is how it has to be. You're like, hey, this is kind of how I'm feeling about this. How are you feeling? Can we talk about it? Can we meet in the middle? um,
Hmm.
so that's one of the things that I hope Libra placements will take away from this is, try not to just like fully shy away from conflict, but to utilize your strengths as a Libra in navigating conflict. Because of all the signs of the zodiac, the air signs, Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius, are known for their social abilities. They rule air, which is a mental, intellectual, and social element. So we can learn a lot from Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius, differently, of course, but we can learn a lot from each of those signs about how to relate to others. Gemini, a lot of time, is through, that communication. And in this case, Libra is through that relational capacity, and just the fact that our relationships are very dynamic. They're always changing. People's needs are always, changing, even day to day, like something that might work a week ago, it's like this week we're under different circumstances, so we just need to adjust. But if we're too afraid to say anything or whatever, you know maybe nobody is satisfied. So yeah, just to your point, I think it's great, the ability to negotiate and understand people's
Yeah.
needs. Very, very Libra coded.
I have a great example of Libra versus Aries. I went
Hmm,
on an Ibiza trip recently,
okay.
and four of the girls, me, I'm a Gemini, my other girlfriend, she's a Gemini.
Okay.
We have one member, she is a Capricorn, but Aries rising, and
Okay.
another girl who is a different sign.
Got it.
And we went on this Ibiza boat cruise trip. It was literally $100 per person. We went in thinking it's going to be like a nice experience. Oh my gosh. It was the most catfish cruise experience ever.
No way.
It was disgusting, this boat, right? So our friend, which I had no idea she was a
Yeah.
Libra rising because
Okay.
it doesn't seem like that. She doesn't come across like that.
Mm,
But she was the one who stood up for all of us and started to complain and get very angry at the staff members.
mm,
And we were all shocked because we never seen her like this.
mm.
Me being Libra, I'm like, it's okay, like we'll complain later, like when we're done. She was like, no, we're complaining now and like saying something about it. And she was super angry.
Yeah,
And in a way, I really liked it because she stood up for us.
sure.
So that's kind of like the very Aries and Libra difference that we see. It's just so funny how astrology is so like correct at
Yeah.
the end of the day. I just see it every day in our actions.
Wow. That's so interesting. It's so interesting because I will add now, I guess, that whatever sign is our opposite, like we can still, whatever sign is our opposite, we still have the capacity to embody a lot of that energy because signs that are opposite for a reason, but they also share common,
Mm.
you know what I mean, like energies. So, for example, I actually know a lot of people who are Libra or like they have Mars in Libra, for example, who the way that they assert themselves most of the time is very Libran in nature, but every once in a while you'll see almost like this like Aries come out and you're like, yo, where did that come from?
Oh.
But Aries and Libra are on the same axis. They both are very aware of like me and this other person and like what's the balance here. It's just that Aries is naturally more attuned to me, and Libra is more attuned to you. But Libras who get pushed to that point where they're like, whoa, this is totally unfair and totally imbalanced. And I'm happy to be like considerate of you, but now this is just too far. They can sometimes lean a little bit into that, like the natural nature of Aries
Mm.
to be like, whoa, hold up. Like, I'm willing to give you an inch and now you took a mile and that's crazy. So yeah, that kind of makes sense actually. Wow,
Yeah,
that's funny.
it is. It really is. I have an Aries friend, and I admire Aries. I love Aries because they will speak up and say, "Hey, I find this really unfair, and this is
Yeah,
my point." So
sure.
they just say it, and I'm
Yeah.
like, "Wow, that's bold." Like I wish I could do that.
Mm,
So I try to be more like Aries, like
yeah.
on my day-to-day basis.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
All right, well,
Mhm.
let's go into disempowered Libras. What are some disempoweredness, and have you ever met a Libra who was disempowered?
Yes. Okay, yes. So some disempowered characteristics of Libra, just to kind of get in a little bit here and
Mm.
lay the foundation. Kind of like I already mentioned, these people are very focused on keeping harmony, keeping the peace. This can lead to things like people pleasing behaviors or some type of avoidance of conflict. It can lead to what maybe scientists might call like a fawn response, which is like when you're in a stressful situation, you just kind of placate to whatever is happening. Like if it's stressful, you're like, oh, okay, it's fine. Yeah, yeah, totally. No big
Mm,
deal. When in reality, you're like, well, this is not it. But the tension might be, so immediate that you don't know how else to react other than to please. Um, so that's probably the main thing that people will say, out there in the world about Libras. The other thing is that because they're so relationship oriented, sometimes they can fall into this pattern of over identifying with their relationships and finding all of their value in being in a relationship. So if they're single and they're not with a partner, they'll have
oh,
like a lot of these like excessive obsessive thoughts about like, where's my partner, why are they, they're daydreaming about this person and like getting psychic drawings about them and all this, you know what I mean? Like really, really, really like romanticizing this part of their life. Um, and so the danger is that they can be so blinded by their desire for love that they are not, they don't have a solid sense of identity or, like who they are changes based upon who they're with. So there can be a loss of that sense of self. Because they're also related to beauty and aesthetics, there is a vanity factor here where they can be very focused on like looks instead of like deeper alignment or value or, more stable things. Classic
mm,
example of things like this is people who are in a social scene, or like people who like date other people because they're hot even though like
mm,
they're not aligned values wise or maybe this person has a really good social status or something and so people are like oh I really want to date that person but there might not be anything deeper there So there can be a lot of that like superficiality and vanity that comes through. I mean, there's a lot of other stuff that kind of ties in, you know what I mean? But
Mm,
yeah, they can be very impressionable people, easy to manipulate in some way, because
mm,
if your strength is that you can see every perspective and you also want to please everybody and make everybody like you, then you can become this type of chameleon similar to Gemini, where you just tell people what they want to hear all the time, or you do what they want, and then you eventually forget, like, what is it that I actually believe, and what is it that I actually want, and how would I identify myself? So then you kind of end up like not really knowing who you are unless other people are around. There's also this common thing I notice, especially with Mercury Libra people. Mercury is about our thoughts and our narratives, stories we tell ourselves. I notice that Libra Mercury, if they don't have that strong sense of self, they're easily influenced by other people's perspectives. Like they'll hear other people's things and they're like, oh, yeah, I believe that. But then someone else will tell them something and they're like, oh, I believe that. And they don't
mm.
really have a strong sense of like this. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, you can kind of see what I'm getting
Mm.
at there. They
That's
really
definitely me
essentially, what's that?
sometimes. That's
Oh,
definitely
yeah.
me sometimes, the way you're describing it.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I think that there's value, because the bright side of that is that they're able to see multiple perspectives. They're open-minded to hear new information and then potentially
Mhm.
change their mind. You know, there are many people that struggle with the opposite, where they're very narrow-minded, or even if they're not narrow-minded, they just, you know, hearing a new perspective that challenges your current identity can be scary. So it is good in a way that you have that open-mindedness inherently, and being a Gemini, that's another factor that adds to that openness. um but yeah, sometimes you might feel like it never really settles. You're kind of always just changing.
Mm.
I think knowing that about yourself is important though, and good, to be able to say, you know, this is what I believe now, but also be able to say, but I'm always open to having my mind changed. I think
Yeah.
is uh is like I mean, that's one of the healthiest ways you can go about it, I think. You know, it's like, to
Mm.
be somebody who thinks that they know everything definitively. None of us know everything,
Yeah.
you know, but then to also be somebody who's like, oh, I have no opinion, like I just don't, you know. I know for a while that was like the in thing to do, just pretend like, oh, I don't have a side, I don't whatever, you know. And that's fine, I'm not saying you have to pick sides, but some people will really act like, I don't have an opinion on that, and it's like, you don't have an opinion on that, like, are you sure? You know,
Mhm.
it's still cool, and it's still great to be able to say, no, this is what I think, and this is what I believe, but I'm totally open to other perspectives, and gaining new information, you know.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
I think Libra has that kind of a power where I don't really love stubborn people,
Mm,
people who are like don't want to hear anything
mm,
else but what they believe in. It's like, hey, everything in life is changing. What do you mean? So
yeah.
I always love to see different perspective and choose the one best for me. So having options is great at the end of the day.
Yeah. I feel like, I'm curious if you ever experienced this. I'm trying to think of an example, but I can't think of one. But there's also been times in my life where, you know, I'll learn something, like I'll hear a quote or something, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that's so true for this time in my life. And then, like, 5 years will go by, and I'm in a different scenario. I've changed, I've grown, I've healed, whatever. And I'll like hear that same quote again, and I'm like, yeah, yeah, it kind of resonate, kind of feel like, yeah. But then I'll hear another one, and I'm like, oh no, that seems more aligned with what I believe now and what I've
Mm,
experienced. So I think that's also cool too. A lot of the perspectives that we accept, they don't necessarily have to be like universally true all of the time. It's like, maybe at this point in my life, I learned this thing and it was helpful for me to know right now because this was the lesson I'm learning. But then 5 years later, you know, I get another piece of information that might be, you know, contradictory to that or something. But it doesn't mean either piece of information is any less right or wrong. It just means for where I was at in my life, this applied and this resonated. So I think, yeah, not to go on a tangent, sorry, but there's something to that too.
yeah, no, totally. I've heard Bashar, one of the spiritual leaders, he said that everything is flowing and changing.
Yeah.
And everything comes from the conscious and perspective of one's mind. For
Hmm.
example, 100 years ago, women couldn't work, for example. Now women can. So which one is like the truth? Well, both are the truth. It just depends on the time you were born and like just like how everyone thinks at whatever generation you're born in. Um, For example, there was a time when I used to think that, oh, I want to date a man who pays for everything. And that's like a whole hot topic, on
Yeah.
social media, like no 50-50, which I agree with. I don't think that women and men should 50-50 if you want to date somebody. But I personally had an experience when a man paid for a lot of things. And at the end, when I wanted to break up, he would pin me down with money. That's when I realized, oh, women need to have their own money at the end of the day. Or you need to pitch again, this is for me, Grace, but I believe I need to put a little bit of money in wherever you want so that I have a little stake in it, just like stocks. If it's not your money at the end of the day, somebody else has the power.
Yeah.
So for me, I don't believe a man should pay for everything because I've had a time when I was pinned down about money.
Mhm.
But to another woman, that's not their world, that's not their experience. So, like you said, perspective is to each their own.
Yeah. Absolutely. I couldn't have said
Yeah.
that better. I totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, let's get into then dating with Libras. What are
Yeah.
some dating what is dating like with Libra?
Generally speaking, Libra in relationships, like this is their domain. You know what I mean? So, the potential to really have like a strong, healthy relationship, to really feel cared for, with Libra is very high, especially in the empowered expression. So, because Libras are kind of the rulers of this area of life, they often thrive on companionship and in relationships. I notice a lot of times that people who have Libra, just placements in general, especially sun, moon, rising, Venus, they almost like I don't want to say they're better in relationships, but they can really blossom a lot when
Mm,
they're in the right relationship. By that same token, if they're not in the right relationship and they're in one that's just like siphoning their energy or makes them feel like they can't really be themselves, or there's a lot of weight that they're carrying, then it can really impact them negatively. Of course, everybody is negatively impacted by this, but I'm just saying, especially Libra. But when they're in the right relationship, they can really thrive in a way that's like, oh wow, that's what you want in a relationship. Like you want that the partner that you're with really brings out this incredible side
mm,
of you. So you'll see a lot of that. Um, they really thrive being with a partner or in a pair. They enjoy having like shared and mutual conversations or interests. So especially the conversation part, because Libra is an air sign, they like to you know have conversations with people and connect in that intellectual level. They might also really enjoy sharing art or like beauty. Like I know a lot of Libra friends who they love going to like art museums or to music shows or whatever, and they also love to do that with their partner. Um,
mm,
they sometimes can struggle because of that. They can sometimes struggle with independence and maybe a little bit of like codependency in a way. That's kind of like a Scorpio Cancer topic as well. But they're so used to and enjoy so much being in connection that they can feel uncomfortable alone, or they can feel fearful of being their full selves when they're alone, or whatever the case might be. So there's that balance between independence, which is kind of like a very Aries theme, and togetherness, which is a Libra theme. Um, Again, I kind of already mentioned this, but this can apply in relationships as well. They don't really like confrontation or conflict, so that can lead them to tell people what they want to hear and say what they want to say, or dress the way that they think other people want them to dress, and kind of keep up with the Joneses instead of being real and honest. And that can create resentment and imbalance in a relationship. But truthfully, at its best, Libra can really show us how to exist in a healthy, balanced partnership, like a true partnership, not just like some half assed, half committed, whatever. Like, this is really the potential that, you have when you work together with another person. You're able to find that not compromise, but compromise and collaboration, I would say. What it's like to be equal in a relationship, how to add beauty and romance into relationships as well, because I think that's a important part of it. Not everything is going to be rainbows and butterflies in every relationship, but Libra can show us that that can be very much part of a relationship. So, good
I
good
like
things
that.
overall.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes I think it's a hot topic these days. Oh, like you should be single and learn who you are, and
Mm,
like being in a relationship, you will always get into divorce, there's fights. But like you said, sometimes there are times when you blossom with a relationship, and we shouldn't
yes.
forget about the beauty of that.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And You said I just thought of something actually because you said that,
Mm-hmm.
but then I lost it. So maybe no. But
Yeah.
I totally agree with what you're saying, and I think it's important. I think that's another thing that is very common online nowadays, and in this like self development industry, wellness industry, is you have to love yourself before you can love anybody else, and surely it's important to love ourselves to some degree, obviously, to be able to function in a healthy relationship. But I don't always think that we need to be, well, no, not always. I don't think we need to be perfectly healed. That doesn't even exist. Perfectly
Mm.
healed before we can get into a relationship. And what I was going to say before is I also find that Libras, um, they can learn a lot about themselves in relationships. I think every sign can learn a lot about themselves in relationships, because the reality of relationships is that they will put up kind of like a mirror to you, regardless of what your sign is. So if you have any weird patterns that you're like kind of acting out that you don't know about, or that you do know about, somebody there to reflect that back to you is going to like hit you right in the face. Whereas when you're going around the world by yourself and you don't necessarily have other people there giving you that feedback or reacting to you in that same way, it can be easier to like live in this bubble where you're like just doing whatever. But when you're in a relationship, you are faced immediately with like, hey, this is your behavior coming right back at you. Like, how are you really feeling about this? So the potential to really learn about yourself becomes kind of higher in a sense when you're in a relationship, in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I do think by that same token, Libras can also learn about themselves a lot in relationships, and if they if they allow themselves to really be open to that, you can really grow a lot in relationships, instead of, for example, maybe you're in not the right relationship and it just kind of like beats you down and makes you feel worse about yourself. So yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just a little point talking about relationships.
Hmm.
I remember when I was dating and going through, like Hinge and things like that. I would just notice this is my own projection, so don't take it with a grain of salt. But when I
Sure.
would notice that I'm talking to Libra men, I noticed they were a little too feminine for me.
Mm,
For example, they would ask me, "What do you want? Like, where do you want to go for dinner?" Like so
mm,
much of asking, which is great.
mm,
Some women like that, but I think for me, I was like, okay, I want somebody to put their foot down. I'm gonna take you here. Do you like it or not? Kind of energy. So, I found that Libra men were just a little bit feminine for me.
mm.
Do you feel like that? Or
I get what you're saying. I
mm,
think that Libra, because they're so focused on harmony, they can sometimes come across a little bit passive. Kind of like what you're describing. Like, instead of asserting, hey, I made a reservation at this time for this place, be ready at this time. Does that work? It's like
yeah.
that's much more like I'm taking the lead here. Whereas Libra is, they're trying to lead, but in a different way, where it's more of like, oh,
Mm,
let me hear what you have first. Let me listen first before I go ahead, right? So it's almost like Aries will take that initiative and then ask you like, is that cool with you,
mm,
before we do that. Whereas Libra is like, let me gather that information first, and then
mm,
I will hopefully, maybe,
yeah.
whatever, try to work it out and then run it by you. So I do totally get what you're saying, and I definitely think that can be a noticeable difference between, for example, Aries and Libra, but just in general, something you see with Libras.
Mm,
um, and I think, yeah, a lot of it would come down at that point to like personal preference. But I
yeah.
do agree, and I do think that they can definitely be that way, and it comes from that desire to like, let me make sure I'm considering what they want before
Mm,
I do that. I think for me, um I I don't I don't mind either one. Like, I
mm,
appreciate both sides. Like, I appreciate when someone can kind of just be like, yo, this is the gig, here it is. And
yeah.
then certain other circumstances, maybe I would prefer if someone kind of like felt it out first. Like, if someone's going to make a big purchase or like put in a lot of effort to schedule something, it's like they might want to check first to make sure like I can be there and whatever, yada yada. Or I would appreciate that. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, I see what you mean, especially knowing you too, and like what you prefer, especially when it comes to relationships and like men. I could totally see you preferring more of that, like Aries type of um
Mm,
Aries type of leading, especially
yeah.
because you have like the moon in Aries. So part of like how you feel
And Mars in
nurtured and
Aries.
stuff. And Mars, exactly. Yeah. It's like you feel that like connected to that type of energy over, the more like
Yeah.
passive. Yeah.
Yeah, I shouldn't say that. You put it more perfectly than me. Not feminine men. It's just
Mhm.
about chemistry. Like
Yeah.
I just prefer, because it's the same thing at the end of the day. Somebody is leading you, like you said, but in a different way.
Yeah.
I just happen to prefer it in a more
Totally.
leadership way
Yes.
than, yeah. Because I've met friends. They're like, I don't like alpha male. I don't like Aries type
Hmm.
of men. I like men who will listen to me and really I can take control. So
Yeah.
they would love Libra men, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, is there anything we should touch up about Sagittarius? And I mean, sorry, Libra last minute.
Honestly, I don't know. I guess like I would just want to leave people with like some quick tips maybe.
Mm,
When it comes to Libra, a lot of their medicine is in learning how to stand in authentic alignment even if it disrupts your appearances. Again, I'm not saying you have to like throw that out the window and like intentionally create chaos or whatever to like ruin your image, of course. But sometimes like the perfect balance doesn't always exist. And sometimes that balance is changing. So as long as we know how to be in partnership with others, but still be authentic and still be there like ourselves, and we're not just conforming to whatever somebody else wants, I think that's when you'll start to find a lot more harmony if you have Libra placements. Is it comes from embodying a balanced sense of truth, not in just people pleasing and giving up who you are for other people. So I think that's just one thing that I want to say, and to remember that like you know in the right measure, when you assert your truth, like you won't lose love and you won't lose like the right people who are around you. They'll appreciate you more for being honest. They'll appreciate you
mm.
more for being upfront, because then they know like, okay, cool, how do we relate to each other in a more balanced way, so just try to care a little bit. I know it sounds cliche, but like care a little bit less about trying to always placate to other people, and remember that you're valuable too, and that you deserve to take up that
Mhm.
space and be truthful about who you are as well.
I love that. And one last story
Yeah.
before we go is
Love it.
I remember I went to Vegas with two of my friends and we had a packed schedule. And I remember I was going through like a really tough time and our schedule was packed because we were going to CES and I got these collabs to do these meals like restaurant collabs. And I was trying to help our group by saving money by going to restaurants as a collab. But I
Sure.
remember we were so tired or like we woke up a little late, so we only have an hour in between and I did not want to go to the collab.
Mhm.
But I asked the girls, "Do you guys wanna go?" Because I really didn't wanna I don't like canceling on people last minute, so I don't like when people do that to me, so I don't wanna do that to others. So
Yeah.
I asked the girls, "Do you guys wanna go to the collab?" Instead of vocalizing what I wanted first, since
Mm.
it was my collab. And the girls were my good friends. They actually got frustrated, and they're like, "Grace, what do you want?
Mm.
Like, you decide." And at first I was like, "Ooh, should I take this personal?" But later they were coming from a good place of heart. Like, don't always assert what others want. You say what you want first and then ask. And I was like, wow, you're right. And I started doing that. And just because you're asking for others' opinion, it doesn't mean it's serving you or them. They actually might get frustrated because you don't know what you want. So, like you said, speaking your truth goes a long way.
Yeah. And also,
Yeah.
like, just to add to that, many of our friends, like, they want to find that balance with us as well. So, like,
Mhm.
if they feel like you are always catering to them, like they might, like you said, like start to feel that frustration of like, oh dude, like it's okay, like I'm happy to also
Yeah.
whatever you want, like if this is your collab, this is your event, like we're happy to do what you want to do, you're the one that set it up. So yeah, that's funny. I actually have a story. I haven't really shared many stories, but I want to share
Mhm.
a story that I just thought of for a different context. Is um when I had started doing my business and I was doing these astrology things and started to do more events for corporate or private groups, I was having a really hard time figuring out like what is the rate that works for me. And so I kept trying to, figure out a rate. I would list these numbers. And it's like the primary dialogue going through my mind was like, what are people going to be able to pay? Is that too much? Is that too little? Are these people going to be priced out? And da, da, da. And it was so much focus on like, what does everybody else need? But there's like an unlimited number of people out in the world. You know what I mean? And so I had to have that realization of, Emma, first of all, for these services and the amount of time that you have to put into it, what is a rate that will make you feel good to be here? You won't feel like, if you were to say, Grace, this is my rate for this, what rate do you need to have so that you can show up fully between, your session with Grace, and you're not feeling resentful, like you should be paying more, like you should be paid more, or you're not feeling like you can't focus because you're mad about it. It's like, no, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be present, and I can give you the quality that you deserve. Like, what is that rate? And then how do you compare that to like the market? The point that I'm trying to make is I was so focused on like, how do I make this so that everybody can afford it, and da da da. And then my rates were so low that I was getting burnt out because I wasn't, like, people weren't necessarily taking things seriously. They also were like, oh, it's so affordable, like anybody can, whatever. And I ended up being the one that suffered because I was so busy trying to make sure that everybody was taken care of and nobody would have to be uncomfortable. And in return, I was the one that was uncomfortable.
Mm.
So that's kind of in a different facet, maybe more professional context, where it is important to think of others, but you have to always remember that like you are part of that unit as well. And there needs to be some type of, balance, or again, a negotiation needs to occur if things are imbalanced so that everybody feels supported in the right measure.
Oh yeah, I totally agree, especially when it comes to price too, because we work for ourselves. So sometimes we don't know. And I totally agree. I was talking about this with my girls on my girls trip, and they were telling me my price that I point for my content is very low compared to them,
Mm,
like 8 times low. And I
wow.
was like, well, I mean, I have my own story. I was getting back in my feed after
Sure.
changing management, blah, blah, blah. But it's time where I was like, you know what? Like you said, I was like, I'm thinking about the brand. Oh, they're a little smaller brand. Well, if I ask for this, they're gonna say no. So I'd rather take
Yes,
something than nothing.
totally.
But talking to these girls really changed my mind. Where no, you say a fair price, a little bit more than a fair price, and then negotiate down, and
Yeah,
you won't feel resentful, and you'll do your best as well. And but at the end of the day, consider, like, if I don't get as much views, I shouldn't be charging ridiculous amounts so that the brands don't come back repeating. So it is a hard balance, but
sure.
I do have a tip: ask ChatGPT and then use your own intuition as well. So I've been doing that. So don't lowball yourself. Maybe like you and I, we've been lowballing too low.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, it's always good to, I mean, it's good to consider, like I said, but it's also good to like lead with your rate and be confident about that. Because
Mhm.
the other thing too is I think sometimes we lead replacements as well. Like, say that you lead with a rate and you get some inquiries, and then people, they reject it. They're like, no, it's not within my budget. I can't with my priorities, whatever reasoning they give. I think it, especially for Libra, it can be easy to take that personally and to get like, oh my God, like I've done something wrong. Like now I need to change my rate. Now I need to whatever. And it's like, hold on, no, like keep it steady, keep it steady, hold that rate with confidence. Just because they weren't the right clients doesn't mean that the right ones aren't coming. But if we're
Mhm.
always adjusting based on the feedback that we're getting, and we're not able to ever say like, no, I'm firm on this, then it's like, I could have gotten that feedback and then changed my rate. And then, you know what I mean? It's just all over the place. So
Yeah.
it's another thing too, is like understanding and managing that rejection. Is it doesn't mean that what you have is not valuable. It just means that there is a misalignment in terms of that relationship, coming together in a professional way. So yeah, I love
Mhm.
this. Great tips.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Happy birthday to Libras. Hope you guys took something from this episode, and we'll see you guys in the next season. What is the next season?
Scorpio.
Whoa, I am excited for that season. Something about
Mm,
Scorpios is.
yeah.
All right. See you guys in
See
the
you
next
guys.
episode.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Time's been moving slowly, so we already into